What's going on, everyone? My name is Nicholas Merton here at DataDash, and today is July 24th of 2018. Well, folks, today we have a lot of different exciting things to talk about here on the Daily Update. As always, we'll start off by taking a look at market valuations as well as doing some technical analysis on the market leaders. But outside of this as well, we've got some exciting headlines to discuss. Not only has Bitcoin breached through the big even of $8,000, but along with that as well, we've broken through a line of price resistance for Bitcoin that has been weighing down Bitcoin all the way back since January. So now that we've broken through this 6-month line of resistance, what does it not only mean for Bitcoin, but also altcoins? And along with that as well, we'll be talking about why this might be happening. Some people have correlated it to a few recent articles that have been talking about anonymous sources confirming a Bitcoin ETF from the SEC and the CFTC. I got to be fair with you guys, as much as I'm optimistic on an announcement coming out this year, I think a lot of it's speculation, so we'll take a look at that later on in the video. And along with that as well, we'll be talking about how the G20 has agreed to meet up in October to discuss about building the framework and regulatory structure for cryptocurrencies on an international scale. Very important meeting that's going to be coming up in October. So lots of things to talk about. Let's not push it off any longer and dive right into the video. One thing as well that I do actually want to mention before I dive into all the price action, for those of you who are curious about where I am, I'm in my last stop on this trip for July. I'm going to be attending a conference here in Bangkok, Thailand. It's very, very different from Chiang Mai, much larger city, but just as fascinating as Chiang Mai was in my previous trip back in April. So after this, I will be back home and back to my normal spring of content in about a week. So anyways, just thought I'd share that. A little bit of a mouthful, but going on here, I want to spend some time to talk about this kind of paradigm that we're seeing right now in the market, where we're seeing very good price strength confirmation and optimism coming into Bitcoin. But along with it as well, we're not seeing the same with altcoins. We're seeing a few players sometimes a steady above Bitcoin, but for the most part, some are just barely trailing with Bitcoin in the green. But for the most part, most are in the red. I don't know why some of the charts didn't load here, but going on here, I want to spend some time to talk about what this will mean for market dominance, what it means for the general market cap of cryptocurrencies. Right now, I think we're seeing a general bottom here in markets around 250 billion. We talked about this a few weeks ago, and ever since Bitcoin has started to trail up from its support at 6,000, we have obviously started to see that in the price of markets, as well as some volume returning. Nothing too serious at the moment, though. So as we start to see Bitcoin regain market dominance and altcoins not being able to keep up, what's my general target here? Well, at least in the short term, over the next few weeks, I think that we're going to easily hit 50% for market dominance, and this is going to give other coins, or generally most altcoins, a chance to come back down to their level around 17.3%, which is what we saw back in March of this year. So I think we're going to see that before we really start to see altcoins run up. And this makes sense, guys. Not only is this relatively similar to what we saw back last in July and August, and this is coming from someone like myself who's pretty diversified in altcoins at the moment. I've really started to consider that I might kind of rebuild my position back into Bitcoin at the moment, because we've got a lot of excitement coming in regards to the talks of the ETF. Now, it's still a very contrarian view that an ETF is coming out, but with these headlines coming out and talks starting to come out with financial institutions getting interested and filing submissions for an ETF proposal, it's starting to look like we might have a chance at getting one. And again, the probability starts to come into play for price, so it's something the market has to factor. And obviously, it's tied to Bitcoin, so it's going to mean that altcoins are going to need a lot of momentum and hype around them in order to keep up with what Bitcoin is doing. It's just general market principles there. Going on here real quick before we dive into doing the TA side as well, I want to let you all know I've got a list of all these new coins that have come out recently. I want to let you all know that I'm going to be diving into some projects, doing some research over the next few days before I head back to the US. And when I get back to the States, I read some of the comments from my last video, which I appreciate. You guys gave some awesome feedback. And I'm going to be doing some research into projects that I've not only already been researching, but also some new ones as well, and really try to bring you guys some quality content and quality projects to look into. Again, factoring all the other stuff that I even talked about as well in my old video. I want to make sure that I'm picking quality projects that I would be confident to invest in, that I'd be confident to see turn out in the long term towards the upside. So anyways, just want to let you guys know I'm going to be doing that over the next few days. Going on here to take a look at the TA side of things. I'm going to go ahead and shrink the MACD here as well as the RSI, but we are definitely going to be focusing on these two key indicators here. So as we take a look here at the daily, we can see that we've broken through this line of resistance that has been holding us down back here all the way since January. This is definitely something good to see. And now that we've gotten through this, it's a question as to where our next major target is. We're obviously passing 1,000 here, very big even for Bitcoin. What are we looking for here? Well, we are not only going to experience some resistance at the 200-day moving average, which has started to roll down here, but I think that we're steadfast towards at least testing around $10,000. The reason I say this is because that we're at least going to potentially see a repeat of what we saw back in 2014, where we saw, for example, price go from around $400 at the base here, where we had the fake out, and then eventually a return to the support at 400, a big even level, and then up to around $700. So I think, generally speaking, we've got enough room to at least make it up to the previous high, which was the same back on the previous chart, to come back up to the mean up here around $10,000. Now, excluding that, though, this is also something that we have to consider as well. If we have an ETF confirmation coming out over the next, say, month or two in this term of price range, then we could see this do much larger numbers of upside. We could start to see Bitcoin retest not only 14, 16, 18, and 20,000, but I think we're going to see much higher levels if an ETF comes in, because I think people don't realize, even if the probability is low here, the risk to reward here is astronomical for Bitcoin. And the reason I say that is because what an ETF means, guys, and I've probably rambled on about it enough, and I won't keep you up for too long about this, but an ETF is going to bring about the opportunity for fixed income markets, and this is a multi-trillion-dollar market. This is people's pensions. This is the ability for investment banks to invest in not only Bitcoin, but hopefully more cryptocurrencies that eventually will come down the line, with ETH not being declared as a security, even though it's still kind of in the air at the moment. With these positive remarks from regulators like the SEC, this is paving the way for much more institutional adoption, or at least a much higher chance of getting that, which gives Bitcoin a lot of room to move. Outside of that, though, as well, I mean, the RSI, it's overbought at the moment, but the MACD is signaling quite well. Again, we've returned to the neutral levels here and actually have turned positive on the MACD. The blue line has crossed over the orange line, signaling that we are picking up momentum in this market. The real question here as to whether or not we are going to get shot down at the 200-day. I feel we're going to probably have another day or two of green price action, with the 200-day continuing to correct downwards, resistance on the 200-day, and a bounce back to hopefully find support on this line of resistance that we previously had. Previous resistance tends to become new support, and then from there, I think we'll retest the 200-day and continue climbing. But we'll have to see over the next few days. All I know is that most likely Bitcoin is going to keep on maintaining dominance, and I'm starting to consider that I might reevaluate some of my altcoin positions, at least in the short term. But I gotta say, excluding most altcoins, there is a few altcoins that are starting to look quite positive to me. And I'm not even exposed in these yet, to be completely fair and transparent with you guys. But it is interesting that a lot of the market leaders are starting to look very nice at these levels. So for example, take a look at Dash, for example. I want to take a look at the USD valuations, because in these longer term swings, the USD valuations are very relevant and important to look at. We can see here the Dash has maintained support here over the past few weeks at the general levels we were seeing before the rally into December and January. Very important to see this. We're back towards a mean of normal, kind of understandable price action here, rather than the crazy hype that we saw back in December. And a lot of that is what we've seen in Litecoin. If we take a look here at Litecoin, Litecoin is back holding support at previous resistance from back all the way in September of 2017. And again, below the means of all this crazy price action. So this is generally what most market cycles look like, guys. As much as we might have a little bit of room to, possibly correct lower, I honestly think the reward to risk ratio is very, very nice at these levels. And now that we've gone through and broken through the descending triangle here, in this case, we have not only support here at this key resistance level, but I think that you could possibly see as Bitcoin starts to correct later on, if we get the ETF and we get another December style event, that some of these market leaders might be at a fair price at this moment. It's just going to be a matter of getting past the 200-day. I think that's the big thing that's going to weigh a lot of these players down. So again, I'm looking at a lot of the market leaders, but I'm also keeping up with some small cap and mid cap projects, which we'll talk about again when I get back into the States. But I want to go ahead here and focus in and talk a little bit about the kind of speculation as to why Bitcoin's going up. So there's been this article here from Forbes. It's been a contributor from Forbes talking about why they see Bitcoin going above 8,000. And it's been a lot of hype in the media around these talks of a recent article from the ICO journal, whereas they state that there's supposedly an inside source, or two inside sources, one from the SEC and one from the CFTC, the Commodities, I think it's Commodities and Futures Trading Commission. And in this case, these two organizations coming in and confirming a Bitcoin ETF. Now, this is the actual article here from the ICO journal saying that they're nearly certain to be approved later this year. Now, I don't think the statement is crazy, not in the slightest. I think that we could very well see it this year. I've been preaching that over the past few months, or at least the confirmation. I don't know if we're actually going to get delivery like we did with futures right towards the end of the year. But I will say this. Guys, as much as I like the idea of a Bitcoin ETF coming out, and I do believe that we could plausibly see it, I'm not going to sit here and say that I honestly don't believe it's a good thing to simply go off of speculative anonymous sources. If you read some of these quotes here, it says, our most optimistic source coming from the CFTC says the following. I would call it 90% at this point. The crypto markets have moderated and regulators have watched the lack of drama surrounding Bitcoin futures across several global exchanges. Continuing on, they basically rationalize the idea of a Bitcoin ETF coming out. And they make some decent points here, I think, that are very plausible points. But I don't think you're ever going to have serious leak sources, both of these organizations, and just coincidentally that they're both positive. So again, I wanna believe it, but I'm not gonna try to sell you guys hype on this. I sell it in the sense of the rationale. A lot of these points do make sense, but again, we'll have to see what the SEC is comfortable with in regards to the regulatory framework. And quite frankly, the CFTC does not have any jurisdiction in this space. Again, we're dealing with building an ETF here. And when we're dealing with that, we're dealing with securities law, and that's going to be their jurisdiction to focus on. Now, they might have an opinion to state, or maybe the employees of these organizations, but in this case of regulation here, we have to see what the what the SEC states on the ETF. So I would say that honestly, the big reason why markets are moving for the most part, why we're starting to see a bottom in cryptocurrencies, and why we're starting to see some optimism return here for Bitcoin, is due to the fact that it's clear that there's much more of the market starting to come in and realize that there's a plausible chance of a Bitcoin ETF. Again, this has been a very contrarian view. I think people have a misconception in this market because they hear of a few different YouTubers talking about a Bitcoin ETF coming. The mass majority of the market has left and shows no interest in crypto. And along with that as well, there's a lot of people in this space who do not believe a Bitcoin ETF is coming. I can see it in my comments. Sometimes I can see it out there when I'm reading other articles and watching other figureheads. And that's fine. Everyone's got different opinions. But I think this year you're still going to get a confirmation on it. I believe that in the sense of what I've been able to see on the institutional side in a variety of spaces, from ICOs to the OTC markets to some of the much more positive remarks we're seeing from the financial regulators. And also as well, going on to talk about financial regulators, we've got the G20 coming up here in October, where they're going to have a very specific set of recommendations on cryptocurrencies. So this is going to be a meeting that has been established for, I think it's mid-October, that they're going to be held, and now they confirmed it on July 21st and July 22nd. But basically, there's been some really positive comments as to where they currently stand, as well as some of the same old stigma, some of the same old kind of stigmatized mindset that most of the financial sector has on cryptocurrencies. And to be fair, has to be concerned about with anything new, because these are general concerns here. So going on to the first positive comment, we can see that technological innovations, including those of underlying cryptocurrency assets, can deliver significant benefits to the financial system and the broader economy. So this is positive, but again, we get some of the negative as well. Crypto assets do, however, raise issues with respect to consumer and investor protection, marketing integrity, tax evasion, money laundering, and terrorist financing. And I got to say to this as well, Again, this is the addressing of the broader market. This isn't just talks of a Bitcoin ETF. This is talks of ICOs. This is talks of generally a lot of the kind of dirty tricks that are going on in the ICO space. And to be fair, as you all probably watched my last video, there is some dirty business going on in the cryptocurrency space, as there is with most financial markets. But I can tell you all, it's not the worst things that they're fearing. It's not money laundering. It's not terrorist financing. It has more to do with marketing integrity and protecting investors from schemes. So, for example, I really loved what the SEC had did, what the SEC did with the Howie Coins website. Really, really good at teaching people how to spot scams in this space, because there are. If we sit here ignorant of it, I think that's a little bit biased on our point. We have to be fair in the sense that regulators want to make sure to protect consumers in this case. Now, I don't think they should shut out retail investors from being able to partake in ICOs. I think that needs to be stripped away in the long term, but right now it's just generally stuck to accredited investors, and that's really actually made the ICO model corrupt. I think regulators don't realize that. So, maybe I'll talk a little bit about that on my channel sometime soon. I would like to dive a little bit deeper into it. But anyways, guys, that's it for the video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you guys have anything that I didn't cover within the video that you'd like me to talk about in the next, please leave it down in the comments down below. And what do you all think about the current stance in the market? What do you think's been bringing up prices? Do you think that people are starting to accumulate now that we've based out around $6,000 3 times? Or do you believe that it has to do with a Bitcoin ETF? Or do you think that this is just pure speculation and traders in the market pushing around price, and that we could possibly see 4,000 or 5,000 over the next few weeks? I'd love to hear your opinion, everyone. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Stay tuned.